I wish I could say that it's a pleasure to be here with you today. I've had the misfortune of seeing and being a part of, even if it's just a witness, with little control of the outcome of executions that Missouri has perpetrated. This is no part of a humane or moral process. This is not the completion of some justice that has to be had in order for our democracy to continue. If anything, this is a miscarriage of justice, and Russell Buckaloo's case probably highlights that in ways that haven't been before. Because we all know that if you're a poor person, if you're a person of color, if you're somebody that doesn't have a machine behind you, and as individuals that's hard to get, it's money and power is what it boils down to, that you can be a victim of the death penalty. The two people can commit the same crime and there can be a different outcome just based on who they are. Whether it's a God-given characteristic like the color of their skin, or it's the wages of a low birth. It doesn't seem to matter for Missouri. When judges and lawyers came together through the ABA and said you need to institute a moratorium on the death penalty, there was a deaf ear. When families of victims came forward and said, please don't do this, we don't need this, there was still a deaf ear. Even now, commercials on TV are replete with one political party saying that somebody else is not tough on crime, that we're soft on crime, that to say people over prisons ought to be something that goes along with a fairy tale. Well, I'm here to tell you on behalf of the NAACP for the state of Missouri, the state conference, as its president, that we oppose the execution, that we understand that the death penalty is applied in an unfair way, and has been for a very long time. This is an opportunity that Missouri can take just on a humanitarian basis to say that someone ought not be forced to choke to death on their own blood. That there should not be one further indignity to a life that has been filled with sorrow and pain. That our society does not need it, and that indeed we can preserve our state, our democracy, and keep from being on the headlines of every international paper as it goes forward. It was just a few years ago that we said, be careful if you come into Missouri, if you're a person of color, if you're a female, if you're disabled, if you're over the age of 40, or you're a person of faith, because there's no protection for you related to discrimination, harassment, and retaliation. Save protecting yourself. Right? You can't take your issue to court. It'll be tossed out. They won't hear it. They changed the law. It turns out you don't have to treat people fairly. This takes that to a whole new level, but shows you the level of injustice that's being perpetrated, that's happening right here in our own state. We're here today to bear witness and ask our chief executive, our governor, to change the outcome. It's within his power. And in our view, I think in the majority of Missourians' views, needs to be done. We've asked for legislation to come forward, and it has. We've had good senators and representatives who've tried, but can't get it through this noble building. I think that it's up to us to make sure that this execution, if it's carried out, is remembered. And until that moment, on October the 1st, we do everything within our power to resist, to share with our friends, our families, our communities, to share with our elected representatives, to share with law enforcement, to share with anybody who will listen the nature of this injustice and that it cannot be. I don't want to be a part of a state that has a human rights track record like this. We can't change history, but we can sure change the future. Let's put our voices together and make sure that that happens. We've seen too many, and some are still there, such as Marcellus Williams, waiting with evidence that could exonerate him that has not been considered. Waiting for a tribunal of retired judges to come forward and say what his fate will be. While we're grateful for that effort to be made, it is time to take him off of death row. We've got a national spotlight coming forward, including people like Barry Scheck coming to Jefferson City, Missouri, to argue that this individual should not be killed. That the evidence that they paid for is not fair. And that just highlights the process, because it doesn't seem to matter what end of it that you're on. If you're on the street traveling along, you're more likely, if you're a person of color, to be picked up, even though you haven't committed a crime. There's no proof that pulling people of color over more often than not catches people doing anything less. If anything, all the statistical data shows in the opposite. That when you get to the prosecutor's office, and thank goodness we've got some decent prosecutors now, like Kim Gardner, like Wesley Bell, like Gene Peters Baker, who actually start to move the dial towards justice from where it's been, so that you can have some assurance that the process will at least be fair, even if it is not just. And there's an issue. All the way through to where the prosecution and the judges come back and they say that this person's guilty. But it's important that that relate to the evidence, and that that evidence be considered irrespective of the person's stature or birth. And then on the end, when you see a person like Russell Buckaloo, who, there's no question about the medical diagnosis. There's no question about what's going to happen if they execute it. And still they move forward. That's not what we expect out of our government. That's not what we expect out of leaders that we elect. And I'll tell you right now, that's not what we expect to leave to our children and grandchildren. That's not the kind of legacy that Missouri should have or we should be a part of. So I'm happy to be here with you, to stand with you against this injustice. Thank you.